My girlfriend confessed she'd been seeing someone else. I needed someone who knew how to be a man, she said with a sly grin. My own friends turned against me, siding with her. I didn't argue. I just grabbed my keys, gave a quiet smile, and walked out. By morning, I had over 30 missed calls on my phone. Looking back, all the signs were right there, hidden subtly throughout the last stages of our 3-year relationship. But after spending so long with someone, you naturally overlook the warning signs. At least that's what I convinced myself of. At first, it was barely noticeable. Sarah started staying late at work more frequently. Busy season, she claimed, nothing unusual. But then came the unfamiliar scent of perfume, clothing items I'd never seen before, casually hanging in our wardrobe. And suddenly, her phone turned into a sacred artifact, never leaving her side. Jealousy wasn't in my nature, never had been. But something felt undeniably wrong. The subtle shifts in her behavior, the way she stiffened whenever I embraced her from behind while she texted, the hushed conversations outside our apartment she claimed were about work, and endless girls' nights with friends I'd never even heard mentioned before. It all fell apart last week. I was folding laundry when her phone lit up on the coffee table. A text appeared from someone named Ryan. "Already missing you. Last night was amazing." The rest was cut off, but my stomach sank instantly. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped through phones, but this felt like a glaring red flag screaming at me to wake up. When Sarah returned home later, I confronted her directly. She stood calmly in our kitchen, casually blending a smoothie as if everything was perfectly normal. I leaned against the doorway, steadying my voice. "Who's Ryan?" I asked, as soon as the blender stopped. Her reaction was immediate but chillingly composed. Her shoulders tightened briefly, but then she turned to face me with a cold, satisfied smile. "I was wondering how long it would take, Luke," she replied casually, sipping her smoothie. "Ryan is my supervisor, and yeah, I've been seeing him for about 2 months now." Her tone held no remorse, no embarrassment, just a strange sense of pride that felt like a punch straight to the gut. "I need someone who's actually a man," she sneered, her eyes glinting with mockery. "Someone driven, ambitious, not a guy who wastes weekends gaming with Dylan and binge-watching dumb movies." I stood frozen, her words echoing painfully inside my head. 3 years together, and this was her true opinion of me. Yet through the numb disbelief, something unexpected emerged, not rage, but a sudden moment of clarity. "Does Emily know?" I asked quietly, thinking about the mutual friend who brought us together. "Oh, Emily. She's known for weeks," she laughed dismissively. "Most of our friends know, and honestly, they get it. Brandon can offer real stability, not just empty promises and dreams." That revelation cut deeper than her confession of infidelity. Friends we'd shared birthdays, vacations, and countless memories with. They'd known all along, likely amused by my ignorance. I took out my phone, fingers slightly trembling, and opened our group chat with Dylan and Emily. "Is this true? You all knew?" Dylan replied almost immediately. "Listen, man, you're a nice guy, but Lauren deserves someone more serious. Don't take it personally." Emily quickly added, "We didn't want to hurt your feelings, but maybe it's time you faced reality." I glanced up, meeting Lauren's confident gaze, still braced for my anger or despair, waiting eagerly for a dramatic breakdown she could spin into her next story. Poor, immature Alex, losing it again. Instead, I simply smiled, a calm, genuine smile that caught her completely off guard. Without saying a single word, I calmly went to our bedroom, grabbed my overnight bag that I'd always kept packed for spontaneous weekend trips, took my laptop, and picked up my keys. Passing back through the living room, I noticed Sarah's confident expression beginning to slip. "Where do you think you're going?" she demanded, her voice slightly uncertain. "Out," I answered plainly. "And Sarah? The apartment's yours. I'm sure Ryan won't mind helping you cover the rent." I heard her starting to protest as I shut the door behind me, but I didn't bother stopping to hear her out. My phone vibrated incessantly, likely our mutual friends, trying to justify their betrayal, but I simply turned it off. As I drove away from the apartment, an unexpected feeling washed over me. Relief. Sometimes losing everything opens your eyes to the fact that you never truly had anything real in the first place. I didn't have a clue where I was headed, yet for the first time in ages, I felt genuinely hopeful about what was ahead. First off, thanks for the incredible support on my previous post. I never imagined it would resonate with so many people. A lot has changed over the past week, and honestly, I'm still figuring it all out. I've been staying at a modest roadside inn on the edge of town. Not exactly luxurious, but clean and comfortable. The owner, an older gentleman named Frank, seemed sympathetic when he heard what happened. He even knocked a bit off my weekly rate as a small gesture of kindness. After 2 days of radio silence, I finally powered on my phone to an avalanche of notifications. 32 missed calls, nearly 50 texts. Most from Sarah, some from Dylan and Emily, and a handful from unknown numbers. But what shocked me most was the surge of social media activity. Sarah had wasted no time crafting her narrative. Her latest Instagram posts depicted me as a jealous, manipulative boyfriend who monitored her every move, a story I didn't even recognize. According to Lauren's posts, I'd spent years emotionally manipulating her, cutting her off from friends, and throwing violent fits whenever she stood up for herself. Each of her posts gathered hundreds of supportive comments, even from people I'd once called friends. Her masterpiece was a tearful video claiming I'd financially abused her by forcing her to split all our bills evenly, accusing me of secretly stockpiling my money. Funny considering she earned significantly more than I did and was the one who insisted on the 50-50 arrangement. Then came a troubling message from Taylor, a coworker I'd known forever. "You should probably check your email. Something's circulating around the office." Sure enough, the inbox contained a company-wide notice about maintaining a safe work environment, hinting vaguely at recent troubling behavior from unnamed employees. They didn't name names, but the timing couldn't have been clearer. I could have lashed out, responded publicly, told my side, but oddly, instead of anger, I felt strangely fascinated. How far would Lauren go to destroy my reputation? Turns out, pretty far. Yesterday, thinking I'd escape her drama, I went to my favorite coffee shop, assuming it was safe since Lauren always complained about their coffee. Big mistake. The usually friendly barista now stared at me with visible disdain, as if I'd suddenly become unwelcome. Later, I learned Lauren had become a frequent visitor, sharing her survival story with anyone who'd listen. But things took an unexpected twist later that day. While retrieving some belongings from storage, I bumped into Hannah, Lauren's supposed best friend. She appeared anxious, constantly glancing around as if afraid someone might see her speaking to me. "You need to be careful," Hannah whispered urgently. "Brandon isn't just her boss, his wife. She has powerful connections, seriously powerful. Lauren's been spreading rumors that you're unstable, dangerous, even." I hesitated, confused. "Why are you telling me this?" Hannah glanced nervously around once more. "Because this isn't the first time. There's history. Before you, another guy at work fell for Lauren. She and Brandon pulled the exact same stunt. He ended up leaving town altogether." That revelation hit me hard, reshaping my entire perspective. I spent the night researching, scouring legal records, social media posts, anything I could find. Turns out the guy Hannah mentioned really existed. His name was Eric something, and he mysteriously disappeared from all social media around the same time Lauren joined the company. Things got even more bizarre this morning when my landlord called. Apparently, Lauren tried to get my name removed from our lease, claiming I'd abandoned the apartment. When that failed, she insisted I'd threatened her. Thankfully, the landlord didn't buy it. In fact, he reached out to warn me because his own sister had dealt with something similar a few years back. But the craziest twist happened just as I was processing everything else. I received an Instagram message request from an unfamiliar profile, a sophisticated-looking woman in her 40s adorned with expensive jewelry. Her message was short but chilling. "I believe we should talk about my husband and your girlfriend. Coffee tomorrow?" It was signed simply, Mrs. R. I'm meeting her in about an hour. Something tells me Lauren's carefully constructed fantasy about finding a real man is about to unravel spectacularly. The irony is, the more Lauren crafts her web of deception, manipulating our friends into picking sides based purely on her lies, the freer I feel. Every twisted accusation, every fake tearful performance just reinforces what I already realized. I'm not losing anything truly valuable. Sorry it took me a while to post again. The past 2 weeks have been absolutely insane. That coffee with Mrs. R turned out to be a game changer. She revealed she'd been quietly gathering evidence, not just about Lauren's affair with her husband, but about a pattern of troubling incidents at their workplace. Remember how Hannah mentioned a former employee forced out of town? He wasn't even the first victim. Mrs. R had uncovered at least 3 similar situations involving her husband over the last several years. Young staff members getting manipulated into relationships, then helping eliminate anyone who became inconvenient. This time, however, Mrs. R decided enough was enough. She had texts, emails, hidden expense reports, even security footage from their office parking garage. She needed just one more thing, a dramatic public exposure. And that's where the annual company gala came in. Initially, I had zero intention of attending. Why would I want to show my face there again? But Mrs. R had other plans. Sometimes, she explained calmly, the best revenge is simply letting people reveal who they truly are. The gala took place at a luxurious hotel downtown. I arrived fashionably late, better dressed than I'd ever been for one of these events. The reaction when I walked in? Absolutely priceless. Lauren almost spilled her drink. Brandon's face lost all color so quickly I genuinely thought he'd faint. But the best part? I didn't even have to lift a finger. They unraveled all on their own. Moments after my entrance, Emily stumbled toward me, obviously tipsy, ready to talk. Here's your completely unique and restructured version of the provided text. You've got some nerve showing your face here, Emily sneered loudly, her voice deliberately carrying over to nearby groups. After everything you did to Lauren? I simply smiled back calmly. Interesting choice of words, Emily. Mind explaining exactly what I did? That's when Taylor, remember her, the co-worker who'd warned me earlier, stepped forward confidently, phone in hand. Unbeknownst to everyone, she'd been gathering her own evidence. Screenshots of Lauren boasting about her new conquest in office chats, recordings capturing her strategizing how to spin the story alongside Brandon. Actually, Taylor announced firmly, drawing the attention of the room, I think we'd all benefit from hearing the truth. What followed was pure poetic justice, orchestrated flawlessly by Mrs. R, who arrived exactly on cue, holding a tablet that conveniently accidentally connected to the venue's projector. Suddenly, private messages, compromising photos, and Lauren's increasingly frantic attempts to control the narrative filled the screen for all to see. But the real spectacle came courtesy of Dylan, my supposed loyal friend, who valued career advancement over integrity. He had secretly been filming the evening, planning to later hand over proof of his allegiance to Brandon. Instead, he ended up capturing Lauren's spectacular meltdown. You think you've won? Lauren shrieked at me, completely losing her composure. You and that bitter old woman won't destroy everything I've worked for. Brandon loves me. We're starting a life together. That's when Mrs. R stepped forward, calmly holding up official-looking paperwork. Actually, dear, Brandon's divorce papers say otherwise. Filed yesterday. Turns out, Brandon had promised Lauren the exact same fairy tale he'd sold to all his previous victims. Different actress, same script. The irony was, I barely had to say a single word the entire night. I simply stood back and watched years of lies, manipulation, and deceit unravel spectacularly before everyone's eyes. Hannah, quiet throughout the drama, suddenly spoke up, her voice shaking. I helped Lauren, she confessed, staring at the now silent crowd. I helped ruin Eric's reputation, the last guy they targeted. I can't do this anymore. By midnight, the event was essentially finished. Lauren had fled, makeup smeared by angry tears. Brandon was locked in an emergency HR meeting. And those friends who'd eagerly taken Lauren's side, none could even look me in the eye as I walked past. On my way out, Mrs. R gently grabbed my arm. Thank you, she whispered sincerely, for being the one who stood firm. Driving back to my modest motel room, I felt strangely at peace. Frank, the motel owner, was still awake in his office watching late-night TV. He glanced up, noticed my expression, and chuckled knowingly. Good evening? You could say that, I replied with a tired but genuine smile. This morning my phone started buzzing again. Only now, the tone had drastically changed. Apologies, backtracking, explanations. Everyone suddenly claiming they never truly believed Lauren's story. And surprisingly, even Eric, the previous victim who'd vanished from town, reached out. He'd quietly followed everything through mutual acquaintances and wanted to connect. Finally, it felt like everything was coming full circle. Here's your completely unique, restructured, and anonymized version of the provided text. Sometimes karma doesn't need our help. It just needs someone to watch. Final update. This is the closing chapter of a story I never thought I'd live. And trust me, you'll want to settle in for this. First, the fallout from the company gala was swift and brutal. Within 2 days, Brandon and Lauren were both quietly asked to resign. But that was only the start. Remember the documents Mrs. R collected? Turns out, what she'd revealed at the party was only the tip of the iceberg. She had every forged expense report Brandon submitted to cover business dinners with Lauren, every email detailing their schemes against co-workers, and falsified performance reviews used to push others out. Mrs. R handed everything directly to the company's board. Corporate legal didn't waste time, less concerned about the affair and more alarmed by the extensive financial fraud and workplace sabotage. Now Brandon and Lauren face serious civil suits. Here's where the story takes another turn. Eric, the former employee who'd mysteriously disappeared, resurfaced. And he didn't come empty-handed. Turns out he documented every detail before leaving town. Messages, emails, a coordinated smear campaign launched against him by Brandon and Lauren. He just hadn't known how to use it until now. Mrs. R introduced Eric to her attorney, and within days he launched his own lawsuit. Then, something incredible happened. Other ex-employees began speaking up, each with their own evidence, each with their own stories of manipulation and sabotage. One scandal spiraled into an avalanche of accusations. Lauren, desperate to regain control, released another tearful video, painting herself as the true victim, claiming Brandon had manipulated her, and she was now being unfairly targeted. But then Hannah finally took a stand, posting screenshots of private chats where Lauren openly gloated about her conquests and detailed plans to sabotage co-workers, laughing at the misery she caused. Last week, Lauren showed up unexpectedly at my motel. Frank, the owner, called me urgently. "That girl you mentioned, she's causing a scene in the parking lot." I didn't rush back. When I finally arrived, Lauren was sitting on my car hood, mascara streaked down her face, clutching a thick envelope. "I've got dirt on everyone," she warned, her voice trembling, despite her attempt to sound threatening. "If you don't help me fix this, I'll expose everything." I couldn't help but laugh. "Go ahead, burn whatever bridges you still have. Let's see how that works out." In frustration, she threw the envelope at my feet. It burst open, spilling photographs, screenshots, private messages, years of blackmail material she'd collected from manipulating others. Her last insurance policy, now useless, and scattered across the pavement. I calmly photographed each page of Lauren's evidence while she stood there, stunned. Then I handed the envelope back to her. "Go ahead. Share whatever you want," I told her plainly, "but take a good look at where your schemes have gotten you so far." People like Lauren always panic when their own methods are turned back against them. She immediately began tearing apart the envelope right there in the parking lot, screaming that we'd all regret this. Her tantrum? Someone nearby recorded the entire meltdown. It went viral within hours. The final blow came yesterday. Mrs. R's divorce was officially finalized, and she won big. She kept the house, the cars, and most of their shared assets. Brandon's comfortable severance from the company vanished into legal expenses. His professional reputation is now in tatters. And future job prospects? Let's just say he's practically unhireable thanks to Google search results. As for Lauren, last I heard, she's moving back home to live with her parents several states away. Her social media presence abruptly vanished. The so-called friends who took her side, they're now scrambling to deal with their own fallout. Turns out betting on the wrong person has consequences. Dylan sent a long, pathetic apology yesterday, expressing regret and claiming he should have stood by me. I responded simply by sending back a screenshot of his previous messages, supporting Lauren's lies. He blocked me immediately afterward. Typical coward move. Emily is deep in damage control, terrified that the dirt Lauren accumulated could ruin her career. I almost feel sorry for her. Almost. As for me, I just signed the lease on a new apartment and landed a promotion at work. It's amazing how much life improves once you remove toxic influences. I've even started dating again, taking it slow, doing things right this time. In the end, the best revenge isn't about plotting or getting even. It's living your life fully, letting toxic people implode on their own. But I won't deny, watching their house of cards collapse has been incredibly satisfying. This will be my final update. Thanks for riding along through the chaos. Just remember, karma doesn't always need your help. Sometimes all you have to do is stand back and let people show who they truly are.